Hi there, this is Eshu. I'm the abbot here at Zenwest Buddhist Society. This Living Zen-podcast is just one of the many resources we've created at Zenwest to make Zen practice and training more available and accessible to people all over the world. Instructional videos, printable resources, and much, much more are also available on our website at www.zenwest.ca. If you're a regular listener, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email at office@zenwest.ca and let me know who you are, how you got started, and what brought you to Zen. Everything we make available in person and online at Zenwest is only possible because of the support of our members and associates, people like you. If the efforts of our community are making a difference in your life, I'd like to invite you to show your support and take part in making it happen by becoming an associate or member of the Zenwest Sangha. You can do this by clicking the Join Us tab on our website at www.zenwest.ca. Thank you for your support, and thanks for listening. Continuing with our investigation of the gateless barrier, Case 21, Yunmen's dried shitstick. The case. A monk asked Yunmen, "What is Buddha?" Yunmen said, "Dried shitstick." Wumen says, "It must be said of Yunmen that he was too poor to prepare even the plainest food and too busy to write a draft. Suddenly he took up the shitstick to support the gate. The Buddha Dharma is thus sure to decay." Wumen's verse says, "A flash of lightning, sparks from flint. If you blink your eyes, it's already gone." Yunmen's dried shitstick. I remember when I was first starting to practice Zen and doing lots of reading about Zen. Based on my upbringing, not so much my upbringing, but some of the choices that I had made myself spiritually, I had a connection with a Christian faith that was always focused a lot on, it seemed to me, on external uprightness or correctness to some degree. So when I came across the gateless barrier and I was kind of going through it, and I came to Case 21, which in Japanese, what Yunmen says, the translation in Japanese is kanshiketsu. Kanshiketsu. And I read that it was dry shitstick. I thought this was great. Like the title of this chapter in this religious scripture is dried shitstick. How wonderful. How not sort of clean and prissy. How down to earth. Anyway, that was just kind of the person that's what I was like when I first started practice. Just using the word shit really impressed me in spiritual practice. So the case, Yunmen's dried shitstick, is very brief. Most cases with Yunmen involved are very brief. He seems like he didn't spend a lot of time talking, explaining. He was a really succinct but very challenging teacher, I think. In those days, they didn't have nice Charmin to wipe their bums with in the monastery. What was used was just a stick to, after you've gone to the bathroom, you use a nice polished stick to kind of clean out what was left behind. I think for all of us, including myself, even talking about the way that I perceived this koan when I first came into Zen, it's really easy to see that our mind is geared towards this discrimination between clean and unclean, or pure and impure, or good and bad. We get attached to it, we become fixated on it, and it becomes just the way things are. We forget that this is a very subjective discrimination, and that in the absolute sense, when we look at this world, good and bad of their own don't exist. Sort of like an objective absolute good and an objective absolute bad. We can't find them anywhere without the application of self. So what we have here is Yunmen doing something probably near the toilet of the monastery. And it's always the case that when you're a practitioner, when you're a monk, cleaning the toilets is a necessary practice. Whenever you're dealing with a group of people living in community, one of the primary areas of concern is always going to be the toilet. Ensuring that people are able to use the toilet, ensuring that the toilets work. The fact of the matter is, folks, as long as you're dealing with living creatures, beings, you're going to be dealing with a lot of shit. Period. Not many people see the glory of the abbot's position before all the members come, which involves going around the yard, making sure that all of the dog's shit is picked up. Every week, the other day I was putting the chickens away, and I picked them all up, and then I went to go pick up the ramp, to take the ramp off and hang it, and put my finger right in a juicy chicken poo. And then I looked at myself, and I had both of my knees were covered in chicken poo. And so there's just a lot of shit. And I didn't really get mad about it. I didn't get upset about it, because I've come to recognize that whenever you're going to deal with living creatures, whether they're people or whether they're chickens or whether they're dogs, slugs, worms, doesn't even matter. Even, plants in some ways create their own kind of shit. And as long as you accept that this is the case, shit isn't such a bad thing. In fact, it was often common practice, and I still really like it, that the abbot is the person who cleans the toilets. Because as I often point out, most of the time, interview is optional. What you get in each of your bowls at a meal, aside from a small morsel that we ask that you take some of everything in the first serving, it's optional. whether you go out on the deck or whether you go out into the yard or whether you're doing kinhin, a lot of this stuff is optional, choosing whether or not you want to do it. But when it comes to going to the bathroom, it's the one place where if anybody is in a place for an extended period of time, you can be virtually certain that they're going to go to the bathroom. It is the most used and sacred place in a home and in a practice center. In many temples, there's often bodhisattvas in the bathroom, toilet protecting deities. We actually have a couple of bodhisattvas in our bathroom up here as well. And it's funny, it's cute to kind of think about it and chuckle and say, oh, that's kind of cute. We have the company of bodhisattvas while we're relieving our bowels. But when we step back from it, from our own subjective distaste for the smells and textures and sight of our own waste, we can see that it's very true. There's no escaping it. It's as inevitable as birth and death. Intake and outtake are a part of this activity. So Yunmen is a teacher in a monastery, and in the Chinese form, in the Chinese structure of monastic practice, I had a great conversation once when I was a young practitioner, had been practicing for maybe a couple of years. The Victoria Zen Center was still very much a bunch of cushions in a box. There was no center or a place of practice formally. We sort of borrowed space. And one day I was downtown in Victoria walking along Government Street because I was that'll tell you how new I was to Victoria, that I still sort of frequented Government Street. And this Chan nun walked by, so Zen tradition, but in the Chinese tradition, walked by. And she was a Western woman, and in most Chan traditions, still all the old rules apply, celibacy and shaving of the head and all of those things. And I was just like, wow, this is a sign, because certainly you don't see that many Zen ordained just walking around in town, let alone women, Caucasian women, Chan nuns. So I thought, I'm going to go talk to that person. So I went and talked to her and introduced myself, said, I'm practicing Zen, and she kind of, okay. And then I ended up basically hijacking several hours of her day and went out and had coffee with her and talked her ear off, and she laughed at me a number of times. And one of the questions I asked her about was interview and Sanzen, and I, of course, had most of my knowledge about Zen at that point had been from reading. And so I said, in the Chan tradition, do they do this Sanzen and interview and all that kind of stuff? And she said, well, yeah, we do the interview. She said, but most of the time, interactions between teacher and student are teaching by ambush. She said, generally the way that it works is that you'll be going through the daily life of the monastery, and there will be an interaction, just a bumping into the teacher or bumping into one another, and the interactions can go in many directions. And sometimes they can be completely mundane, simple interactions, and sometimes they can be like abrupt openings into the Dharma activity. Just using my own words, because this was a long time ago that we had this meeting. And so what she explained was that there was no sort of formal time where you needed to be on, for the teacher, where you needed to be prepared to respond spontaneously and dynamically. That was all the time. And it wasn't just one way where, you were being tested by the teacher. It was that the teacher, as a student, you could challenge the teacher regularly. And that's how it worked as well. Just a simple leading question. And so whenever I come to this case, that's always what I see. I mean, I literally see Yunmen, after breakfast, after a nice cup of green tea, he's gone out to use the washroom, and he's kind of stepped out of the bathroom door, and there's a student. What is Buddha? And this question is it's like a canon. It's nothing subtle about it, nothing hidden about it, nothing could go either way about it. It's a very direct question. And Yunmen responds, dried shitstick. So, another sort of anecdote, one of the things before I started getting into Zen practice, I was involved in martial arts, several martial arts. And one of the martial arts I did a significant amount of study and a little bit of practice of was a martial art called Jeet Kune Do, which is a martial art that was really begun by Bruce Lee, who I'm sure you've all heard of. And one of the real principles of this was that you have to be able to figure out how to strike from where things are, rather than sort of adjusting your position and striking from that new position. You have to literally strike from where you are. So if my hand is down here, rather than bringing it back up and hitting, I would have to figure out how to move my body to make an effective strike just from there, because it gives you no time to respond, right? And so also what I see in this is Yunmen practicing Jeet Kune Do, literally sort of striking lethally from a position in which the opposite party really, I think, thinks that they've got him. Like he's coming out, he's probably got a big smile on his face. Oh, what is Buddha? Dried shitstick, bang! And I think that there's so much going on in this interaction. In the setup, in the execution, in the response, that it demonstrates and highlights Yunmen's mastery in a way so quickly that it's difficult to grasp it. Why has the student chosen that moment to ask the question? What's the comedy, or what's the paradox of the situation? The student clearly thinks there's something about this circumstance that's going to set Yunmen off. They've got an idea about this clean and dirty, about this spiritual practice and mundane practice, and they're pressing it. Yunmen responds with whatever there is, whatever's at hand, whatever's active, engaging, taking place and unfolding in this moment. What is the manifestation of Buddha? What is the manifestation of the awakened mind? I mean, Yunmen is coming out of the toilet, maybe with a dirty, dry shitstick. I think one of the real challenges of Zen, from the beginning, and certainly continuing today, and it's something that I'm personally really struggling with right now myself in practice and engagement with students and trying to make this practice accessible, is that we have as human beings, we have a very deep desire and tendency to intellectualize, to conceptualize. We find an experience or a circumstance interesting, wonderful, inspiring, opening. And we so easily make this into an expression and something to talk about infinitely, almost. We can have a single, momentary, fleeting experience. And we don't have to make it into like just a spiritual thing only. Oh, I had a great spiritual awakening. No, I'm talking about a physical sensation or a meal or anything. Any kind of momentary experience. And it provides almost limitless fuel for conversation and fantasization and intellectualization, and we can go on and on and on. We can write blogs, and we can write novels, and we can write textbooks, and we can run workshops, and we can do all of this kind of stuff. And it seems to me, right now, that in all of this, we can really lose what we're doing. We can lose the realization or the understanding of the significance of the experiential component of the whole equation. We can get so lost in wanting to write more or to talk about an experience more that we forget that we have this one life in which we can have experience after experience after experience. But we're so busy talking, and we're so busy describing, and we're so busy comparing and fluffing each other up, that we drop away the experiential component that's available to us in everyday life. And in fact, we are consciously sometimes ignoring the experiences that we are having, that are unfolding right in front of us, out of a desire to go on about something that happened back then. So, in some ways, when I look at Yunmen's dry shitstick, what I see is a very skilled teacher calling a student back. The student approaches, and I mean, I don't mean I don't want to diminish this student, because I think that ambushing a Zen teacher coming out of the bathroom is a bold, brave move. Particularly these days, particularly somebody like Yunmen. You don't know what he's going to do. They didn't have ethics policies and boundary statements and things like that in those days. And if he's coming out of the washroom with a shit stick, and you hit him with "What is Buddha?" all bets are off. And I'm sure there was probably a group of other monks hiding in the bushes. Maybe they put him up to it. Hey, when he comes out of the bathroom, ask him what Buddha is. I don't know. But anyways, coming out of there, and Yunmen, you have to, this is a case, this is one example of a person who is very skilled. He's in a number of cases in the Mumonkan, and there is a record of Yunmen that you can pick up, and they're all like this. It's one of the most difficult texts, master texts in Zen, because Yunmen is so succinct. They're like one after the other. There's maybe 10 of them on a page, and they're all like, if you come with a sort of really rational straightforward thinking mind. It's literally like, this person is insane. I have no idea what the person is talking about. And it's not until you sort of like take each one at a time and really break it down and try to find the context and understand what's going on in it, where you start to go, this guy was just consistently like, like a bucket of cold water, like every time it's just like, come back to the experience of what's going on right now. So what is Buddha is so tempting for a teacher or somebody who's engaged in the Dharma to crack open into a conversation about, what is Buddha? I did an interview with a fellow in Australia just the other day. The first question was, what is Zen? And this is often the first question. And it's so difficult to do these kinds of interviews because the inclination that I have is to respond to that question in a practice-oriented way. But, if you're doing an interview for a podcast, it's going to be lost on the audience. Like to just shout down the wire at somebody in Australia. I'm sorry, you just redlined my microphone. I lost you for a few seconds there. No. But Yunmen, over and over again, bang, bang, bang. And they're not horrible. They're not explosive. Like, he's not a shouter. He's not he did hit people. But and after, I am always imagine that after this interaction, he just walked away. What is Buddha? Dry shitstick. And the monks going like, that's it? Come on, I thought this was pretty dynamic interaction here. And it was, but if you're not careful with Yunmen, you kind of miss it. And Yunmen, in his comments and in his verse, really presses this point. It must be said of Yunmen that he was too poor to prepare even the plainest food and too busy to write a draft. Yunmen is such a brilliant teacher in this collection of cases, and he uses humor so much, and he uses sarcasm so much, and if he's praising somebody, it's likely he's cutting them, and if he's cutting somebody, he's really praising them, unless he's doing exactly as it appears, and it sometimes takes a lot of time to really sort out what he's saying. But I've already sort of explained this. It must be said of Yunmen that he was too poor to prepare even the plainest food and too busy to write a draft. Again, what Yunmen is saying about Yunmen, it comes off as a real jab. If we come from our subjective perspective of good and bad and right and wrong and the way that we sort of go about the world, not being prepared is probably not a good thing. Plain food, I mean, oh gosh, it's not even, he can't even prepare like anything to chew on. You'll be hungry. And he's too busy to write a draft. He's just improvising. He's not even starting to prepare himself or to make a good show of it. He doesn't give a shit about doing it well. He just hits. And from the perspective of Yunmen, and from the perspective of the Zen school, it's so wonderful. To be poor means to have no material possessions to uphold or to worry about or to conserve. He doesn't spend his time worrying about the monks and how they're going to chew on what he said, how wonderful the verse that he spontaneously composed, or, great opportunity to use this verse or this quote or this, reference to this. None of it. He doesn't carry it around with him. He doesn't have his pockets full of Dharma. He just has his character, has his nature, has the elements that are right in front of him. And it's an elegant, beautiful thing in a lot of ways, but only if you can see it. Suddenly he took up the shitstick to support the gate. And this is this idea of Jeet Kune Do, the intercepting fist, the using what you have from where it is to make the critical maneuver. So this image, I get a lot of images when I'm going through this stuff. So I imagine, the Dharma gate. This is often an image that's used in the Muman, the gateless barrier. Yunmen uses it upholding the house or holding the gate. This idea of a gateless gate as being the entrance into awakening or entrance into the Dharma activity. He's clear it's not an actual gate. He's clear that essentially the barrier is nothing other than ourselves. But in a way, he's referring to the whole teaching. And, this idea that when we're challenged or when we're provoked or when we're asked about the Dharma, this is an opportunity to either uphold this teaching and allow it to continue in the human world, or everything sort of collapses and everything falls into the dirt. Daito talks about this as well. So the image I always get is like, the gate starts to fall over and Yunmen takes his dry shitstick and jams it in to prevent the gate from falling over. And then Yunmen kind of flips gears and says, the Buddha Dharma is thus sure to decay. On the one hand, it seems like a criticism. On the one hand, it's like, using a shit stick to hold up the Dharma gate. But I think that, again, Yunmen is really praising Yunmen because we, again, juxtapose these two things. We juxtapose the holy Buddha Dharma, and we say, and on the other end we have a turd, or a stick with shit on it. And these two things are so far opposed. So Yunmen is again throwing out these barbs at us and saying, can I hook you? Can I hook you? Can I hook you? We see that maybe this kind of practice, this kind of using something like a dry shit stick to demonstrate the essence of the Dharma activity, will be a great help in allowing the golden pavilion Dharma, the golden pavilion fancy robe, flowery speech, talk and talk and talk Buddhism. Maybe that shitstick Zen will be what helps that whole palace crumble. And from Yunmen's perspective, wouldn't that be great? Yunmen's verse says, a flash of lightning, sparks from flint. If you blink your eyes, it's already gone. And here he is talking about he's talking about that strike, that clarity, the demonstration that Yunmen is offering. When we're looking out at the night sky, if you've ever sat outside with another person and watched for falling stars, shooting stars, happens all the time where, did you see it? Oh no, I missed that one. Oh, did you see it? Oh, I missed that one. Just a moment's distraction, you're looking in the wrong place at the wrong time, even if you blink. When that light happens, it's so easy to miss it. It's so fleeting. It's so transient. And this is the nature of the activity revealing itself through our day-to-day lives. This is the nature of Yunmen's demonstration, and it's the reason why we spend so much time learning to pay attention to what's going on in the unfolding activity of our life. Because these glimpses, these openings, these opportunities, these interactions, these circumstances, they're so fleeting. These intimate moments where 2 becomes 1, 3 becomes 1, and separates again into 3, they're so fleeting that if we're looking somewhere else, we can miss it entirely. And it's like in our world today, there's like a laser light show going on all of the time. And it requires so much energy and so much diligence and practice and so much support for us to pay attention to what's going on in our lives, that it's very easy, and I think many people, not just today, always, have come to the end of their life and realized that they've spent so much of their life distracted. And they've missed it. They've missed opportunity after opportunity to be awakened, to be awake, to wake up. And it's not just them. And even if we practice, it can happen all the time. Recently I've sort of had some concerns about my health that have really rubbed my nose in this. You don't know. It's easy to go through life with the idea that, at some point I'll really get serious about this. When the kids are done school and they move off onto their own, there'll be so much more time and energy for me to focus on what I'm doing, and I won't be so distracted. But there's no guarantee that I'm ever going to see those days. All I've got is this. All you've got is this. So whether it's a golden fan or whether it's a dirty bum wipe, that's what you've got. And our practice is to engage with what's unfolding in our life in this moment. There's nowhere else for us to be. There's nothing else for us to do. And the dynamism, the universe is no less unfolding in an interaction with a dirty toilet paper than it is in interacting with a great Zen master, or with a beautiful flower, or with a virtuoso violinist. It's not like the completeness of the universe increases or diminishes based on that subjective interaction that's going on. It's unfolding in every moment without discrimination between pure and impure, good and bad, holy and unholy, spiritual and mundane. None of it. Early on, one of my teachers made this statement that is a mantra to me, and it is just that the universe doesn't care. And that's all. It's very difficult sometimes, because I think certainly, and I think many people like to think, everything happens for a reason, and this happened because I'm this, that, or the other thing, or it was meant to be, or the universe is speaking to me in this way. And that makes things easier to digest sometimes. But I always keep coming back to this phrase that fundamentally the universe is unconcerned with what you're doing, with what we're doing, with what every citizen of Earth is doing. It manifests. It unfolds naturally. And that is a beautiful thing if we can bring our awareness Thanks for listening to the Living Zen-podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.